the other program that's out there that somebody was putting underneath in the video chat, it's an AI program called Writesonic, and it can pretty much write a book for you. Not quite, but very close to it. So you ask it a question, and of course they were doing it on the film and everything else. And the Writesonic writes an entire article on it for you. What Writesonic said is that the magazines were sealed to keep the air from getting in.
What?
The film magazines were sealed, and the Writesonic said it is to keep the air from getting in.
Go.
That's a pretty good AI program when it did that. And then it started to describe that it was specially coded material that is so secret that only NASA has it. As a matter of fact, it's so secret that NASA doesn't even know that they have it. It's unbelievable, this Writesonic. It can make up stories. I mean, whatever information's out there, and it just writes it as an entire article for you. But to say that to stop the air from getting in.
That doesn't make sense.
When you're in a vacuum, where are you getting the air from?
Good point. Yes.
Going to get in there. But it was just hilarious to the one guy on the comments. He was asking Writesonic the questions, and then he copied and pasted the answers down, right? And he did it 2 or 3 different times on it, just to show that it's gathering this information and just writing these articles for you. We're living in a world of pure fantasy when you're allowing a computer to write an article for you, and the information that it's getting is whatever NASA puts out there.
Yeah, it just searches the web like any search engine would. Comes up.
It's not going to search what we do.
No, that's the difference between humans and machines. Humans could think out of the box. Humans can behave in a very different way to machines.
We can analyze it.
Yeah, we do. Machines can't, at least not so much as you'd expect them to be able to do.
Well, the AI programs can search the internet very rapidly for whatever the projected norm is that the people want to sit out there, but it's restricted to whoever programs it where it's going to look. An AI program cannot analyze a photograph the way we can. That is the difference. It can tell you every pixel that's on there, analyze it that way. It can tell you every color that's on there, but we can look and see what is wrong in the photograph.
So they're talking, hang on a minute, they're talking about covering the film with a special coating.
Yes. That is so secret, NASA doesn't know anything about it.
Well, it's hardly, I mean, goodness, come on.
Like, if it's so secret, why would not Kodak have, first of all, developed it?
Exactly.
They're claiming NASA, of course, developed this coating. If Kodak is producing the film, they would have to know about this coating to put it on there, right? That's number one problem with the article. So if it's a patented coating, Kodak would have it. And of course, after the Apollo missions, they'd be using that. You'd be able to put your film from any camera up on the dash of your car on a hot sunny day, and it wouldn't bother it. You'd be able to go through airports without worrying about it or anything else, if it's this resistant for heat and everything else. I mean, I remember my father, when I was a kid, he'd put film in the glove box in the car on a hot day, right? And it ruined it in there.
It would. It would. Heat does that.
But it was in the glove box. I mean, you put it up on the dash. The coatings they claim, put it up on the dash. We're talking 250 degrees here, plus or minus.
And also, when they say here, despite these precautions, some issues did arise during the Apollo missions. For example, the film in the Hasselblad cameras used on the moon's surface occasionally jammed or tore. But the astronauts were able to resolve these issues on site. Now, they got gloves on. How did they resolve it? They don't tell us that. It's all bloody magic, this stuff.
So where are those magazines listed?
Yeah. Overall, the technology available at the time allowed the film to survive the challenges of the hard vacuum. Oh, come on, guys, get real. That's not even a decent result. You don't explain how it was done. You can't coat a film against vacuum. If you coat it, it's presumably liquid, therefore it would outgas anyway. End of story. It's just repeating what NASA is saying in their PDF stuff. So all this program is doing is searching through for NASA's answers to these questions. But they're not getting any answers. I think we know more about the effects of vacuum, at least, than NASA does. Maybe they should ask us how to protect it.
Well, maybe the AI program should have a look at the Alice site and read our article first.
Oh no, wouldn't dare do that because it's not permitted to go to that sort of site. Therefore, they won't get decent answers. Therefore, it's complete fabrication. Therefore, it's all fiction.
Yeah, well, it also doesn't go to Kodak's site for their historical for all of the designs of their film. Because if it's an AI program, it should be able to gather that information rapidly and give it back to you. It doesn't talk about Kodak anywhere in this, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But Kodak were very proud of their contribution to the Apollo program. They kept advertising it. Same with Hasselblad.
You did read the part where it said the magazines were to keep the air from getting in.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous when you think about it. What air?
Obviously, the AI program doesn't know anything about vacuum. And obviously didn't know the actual environment that the film was claimed to be in if it's trying to keep the air from getting in.
You'd think they'd try to stop the air getting out. I mean, that would be one problem they'd have, that magazines were assembled here on Earth, presumably. And if so, they were assembled under atmospheric pressure, 14.7 pound per square inch. You get up into space, 60 miles up, that air has to escape. So were the holes drilled in the magazines to allow the air to escape so it didn't explode it? Nobody says so. Nobody tells us.
I don't think they were sealed at all.
No, I don't think they were. I don't think they had to be. I think they would allow the air to escape if you're going to...
You'd have to redesign it to be able to advance the film.
But of course you would.
Everything about it would have to be changed to allow the gears to crank. Coming out to a button, you're going to have a wire running in there for the rest of the camera, right, to operate it, right, to trigger it. They didn't have Bluetooth back then, so you can't do it that way.
But they wouldn't have any lubricant either because it would all outgas. I mean, this little paragraph here, it's called the lunar module which landed on the moon's surface had to withstand the vacuum and extreme conditions outside. Its structure and seals were engineered to provide airtightness, protecting the astronauts inside from the harsh environment. Well, they don't explain how they did it. They just say they did it. It doesn't mean to say it happened.
No, the Apollo 11 photographic film, it claims here, the films selected for use on the historic Apollo 11 mission were Kodak Ektachrome EF film, which were sealed in plastic bags.
Sealed, eh?
Is that what it said? They were sealed in plastic bags?
Sealed in plastic bags.
Well, possibly they were. Advanced materials such as mylar were used to create airtight seals and protect equipment from the lack of air pressure. That's not what mylar is designed to do. But they're claiming that that's what was used to create the airtight seals.
Did you see any use of mylar creating an airtight seal when they just put some duct tape on it?
No, didn't see any of that.
I didn't see that either.
The use of specialized films and coatings ensured the survival of the photo film in the extreme environment. Oh, get a life, guys. That doesn't even make sense. You don't define any of the protection that that the coatings ensured the survival of the photo film. You don't define the extreme environment they had to be protected from, and yet you expect us to believe it. No, NASA, you wonder why people start to question you, because you make such ridiculous statements.
Well, this is Writesonic grabbing information from NASA and regurgitating it.
Yeah, that's all they do. And then people believe what they read.
And they're doing that for a particular reason, making sure these AI programs, otherwise we would be having a discussion with somebody that's a so-called an expert from NASA, and they can't afford to get out there with these guys because they don't have any knowledge of what happened 50 years ago, right? And they make stupid mistakes, just like talking about Orion going through the radiation belts, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then he makes a stupid mistake and loses his job. This AI program is not going away. Can't argue with it because it doesn't have the information.
They don't provide it.
And I asked ChatGPT, why are you lying to me? And it came back and said, I haven't been updated since 2021, and it's only with the information that is given to me.
Yep, well, that's fair enough.
Well, then those people are now anonymous. That's a nice way to do it. Put the information out, but the provider of the information is anonymous. Can't get a better way if you're going to fake something, if you're going to put fraudulent information out and not have anybody responsible for it.
That's the problem. See, you can't go back to the person who originated it and challenge their information. There's an interesting comment here. Some conspiracy theories suggest that the vacuum of space would have posed insurmountable challenges for the missions, casting doubt on the technology used by NASA. Haha, that's us.
Yeah.
However, these claims have been debunked by scientific evidence. Where is it? An expert analysis. Who is it? The technology available at the time was indeed capable of navigating the vacuum of space, as demonstrated by the successful completion of the Apollo missions. The photos, videos, and data collected from these missions provided undeniable proof of human presence on the moon. That's NASA's mission statement in a nutshell. That's all they had to do. They had to provide the photos, the videos, and the data.
Yeah, but it's not a conspiracy theory. We're presenting factual evidence that does not work. And they can't produce now the material, or they're claiming that they do not have the material anymore that worked at that particular time. They knew there was a problem because we've looked to see what kind of testing that they did.
It wasn't very
They don't
much.
have any documentation showing that they had any success with it. And of course, we've also demonstrated what happens to the film as well.
Yeah.
And if they're just claiming that this is coding that is magically prepared
Yeah, you can't do that.
and magically disappeared again. I mean, why wouldn't Kodak, if they developed a film that was so resilient to all of these temperature and radiation changes and other environmental changes on there, their film would be absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
And of course, this is ultra fine film. And they would be the ones developing it. They would hold the license to that. They would have it as a registered trademark for their own film. They would have their own name. That would be a Kodak whatever named, indestructible brand film. And they would dominate the market.
And they'd license it to people like Agfa and Fuji and Ilford and all the other film manufacturers, so they could do it as well.
Yeah, and then for the movie industry, look at the quality you would get, because they wouldn't have any of these problems dealing with it. They wouldn't have problems handling it. They wouldn't have problems editing it or anything else when they're working in the movie industry, right? Look at all of the technology it takes just to handle the film.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be very careful with that film. It's delicate.
And it has to be refrigerated, and it has to be this, and it has to be that. And if it's that indestructible, all of the stuff they claim that they've got stored, why did they have to refrigerate it?
Good point.
That's a conflict, right? This is the film that is indestructible you claim that you have. But now you have to protect it like that.
Yeah. And you can't allow anybody to look at it. You can't allow anybody to touch it.
Right.
It's
Nobody can handle it. Nobody can do anything. And yet it's indestructible film. Well, let's pull some of this film out and let's see how indestructible it is. Let's put it in Kenner Easy Bake Oven and see how it handles that.
There's a point they make here. It's a little bit further down. To mitigate these effects, they're talking about vacuum. To mitigate these effects, NASA employed various techniques and materials to protect the film. Unnamed techniques, unnamed materials. What protection? The film canisters, that's the Hasselblad canisters, were designed to be airtight, preventing any air from entering and causing damage. Additionally, the film itself was specially manufactured to withstand the harsh conditions of space, with improved resilience with temperature changes and radiation. Unspecified, unnamed. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're just making stuff up. It's fiction. You can't make a Hasselblad film canister airtight to the level of vacuum on the moon.
You found that line where it said that to stop the air from getting in.
You wonder what air they were trying to keep out. There's no air on the moon, guys. Oh, come on. You've got to do better than this, This is really kids stuff.
That's what the entire AI program is about.
Yeah, it's just bigging up NASA.
It writes well. I mean, it expresses itself well. It does do that. I looked up what the program can actually do, and you can pretty much write a book with it. You wouldn't have to do too much extra. It's going to write every paragraph for you, and well written at the same time. Incredible program. It's where it's getting its information from.
Well, it's basically getting it from NASA's descriptions. I can recognize quite a few of the phrases that they use. The pressure bladder, this is talking about the spacesuit, the pressure bladder maintained a stable environment for the astronaut, providing oxygen and regulating temperature. No, it didn't provide oxygen. Came from a completely different source, not the pressure bladder, for God's sake. They don't check what they write, these people, and they take it as gospel.
When they're discussing the radiation, he's discussing the radiation, we're discussing the film, we've got articles, we've got videos, we've got everything else up. This program doesn't know we exist. So its reliability is zero, other than the fact that it can write a nice story.
Now listen to this one. The Linear Energy Transfer Spectrometer, LETS, is a radiation sensor designed to study the lunar radiation environment. In particular, its objective is to measure the rate of incident radiation both from galactic cosmic rays and from solar events to provide information on the hazards posed to astronauts. This is a new probe that they're sending up here in the end of December. And that's all it's going to sit there and do is measure the cosmic radiation. Well, I thought that they did that back in the 60s, didn't they? When Armstrong went there, didn't they supposedly measure all this stuff?
Didn't they leave all that equipment that's still working today? Isn't that what the Apollo missions are? Don't they claim that those sensors are still working today? Why do they need to send another one?
This is called the Peregrine mission.
Yes, they're going to send a probe just for the radiation now.
That makes no sense, does it, if they did this 50 years ago?
Exactly. And remember that James Bond film where he was impersonated an inspector going into a laboratory to ensure the radiation readings were accurate, as if they knew they weren't.
And then jumps out of there onto a lunar set.
He does, yes. And evades all the slow-moving astronauts, jumps into a space buggy, disappears through the side wall of the studio. Great stuff.
I couldn't understand why the astronauts are trying to catch him in slow motion.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
They did that just for link you sent me to Chad Everett. I think we should open that up and have a look at some of the radio and television transmission stations. Well, where's the one on the lunar surface? They need to have that much equipment there, right? If they're going to be transmitting from the moon, they got to have that 4 or 5, 6 tons of equipment sitting there just to go 100 miles. Don't forget that they were only going at a radius of 100 miles with those radio and TV broadcasts. Look at the power that they have to transmit that on those different projects.
But don't forget, well, you're talking about amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, but it's only 101 megahertz somewhere in there, 99 megahertz in there. Now, when we're talking about transmissions coming from the moon and back, we're talking about 2 gigahertz.
Yeah.
That's a really narrow band. And the narrower the band, the easier it's going to be to penetrate things. So
you still have to have the power to do it. And they were sending back television cameras live.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. But when you compare what's in those articles and you see the size of equipment, I mean, you're talking about several thousand square feet of equipment, tons of equipment. I've been into radio and TV stations, and you walk in the back room and it's just a wall of hydro coming in there with big breakers on them to run all the equipment. I mean, they got a little battery somewhere and they claim that they got 14.5 watts of power. But these guys, when you walk in a studio there, you're at 100-mile radius on what they're broadcasting. And if they go farther than that, they have other towers to pick the signal up and boost it if it's covering farther than that. But that discrepancy there is just incredible when you look at it. I don't care whether you're up in the 2 gigahertz or whatever. You're not doing that broadcast, and you don't have to deal with the Van Allen belts or any other form of interruption that's going to mess that signal up. And of course, when you look at the documentation from NASA claiming they've got a problem above 500 miles off the Earth's surface as far as signal, and especially with the CMEs and everything else, the interference of the signal, the complete distortion of it, you name it, the files are there, the documents are there. Yet they turn around and claim, oh, we just send back a signal from the moon, no problem at all. We can run around on a rover, and the guys, you can chat to the guys there all over the place. And not only that, Voyager 1 and 2, that far out, with a tiny little battery that we put in there in 1975, is still working.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, sending back a signal and describing an alien encounter.
Of
if you
course.
can imagine the technology on that Voyager 1. Yeah,
Yes.
like the bullshit is just beyond belief when they go that far. And we just currently had a CME that just was knocking the crap out of everything.
December the 6th.
I've been sitting here for the last couple of weeks, don't have a secure internet connection, Skype's flipping on and off, you name it, all because of these CMEs. And that's interrupting at the ground. You get closer to the Van Allen belts where they're really getting excited, the signal not would just be lost, it would damage any equipment that's out there. And we're just getting hit time after time after time. Like we're getting sometimes 3 and 4 flares a day are happening right now. And it's not just that, they're being pointed at the Earth. That's the biggest difference. You have that 11-year cycle where the highest activity of the sun is coming around and these flares are now ejecting material at the Earth. And that's the difference. And we've had this problem many years ago to a higher state, like when it knocked the eastern seaboard down on North America in 1989. If we had a Carrington event, imagine if we lost all of our computers, electrical connections, banking, everything else goes down, even if it's down for a couple of days. How are you going to communicate through the Van Allen belts and then catch that extra amount of mileage out there to get to the moon or Mars? I mean, driving something on Mars when it ends up on the other side, when it's opposite us on the other side of the sun, and they don't seem to lose a signal when they're operating that thing. It's like they're driving it around and it's just next door, because it is next door to where they're operating it. It's kind of magical how everything just seems to, like, as soon as it leaves the atmosphere, everything works perfectly. You can go left, right, accelerate, decelerate, you can communicate, you can travel any distance you want, you can go to any speed you want, slow down again.
Yeah, this program's really laying it on thick about how wonderful NASA is. The legacy and advancements in photofilm protection. The specialist coatings used on the Apollo missions, what specialist coatings? Paved the way for advancements in photofilm protection. What advancements? The knowledge gained from these missions has informed the development of coatings. What development of coatings? That are now used in various applications. What applications? See, they don't answer any of their own questions, including space exploration, scientific research, and even everyday photography. Where is it? Come on, guys. Where is it? You talk about these things as if it's for real. It's not. It's all fiction. It's made up by AI. So these don't answer the questions.
Well, if it's also claiming that it's used in today's commercial equipment, then how come we get criticized claiming we just bought something off the shelf and it isn't the same quality as NASA was using? When we put the film in a vacuum and it screws up.
Because it would spoil the story, wouldn't it?
I think this program should write children's fairy tales and books and like Rabbit and the Hare and Fox and the Grapes.
Yeah, there's one final paragraph on there. Advancements in materials science and engineering have allowed for the creation of coatings that are even more durable, lightweight and effective in protecting photofilm. These coatings continue to evolve as technology advances, ensuring that the images captured in challenging environments are preserved for future generations. What a ridiculous paragraph.
They're right about one thing.
What's
They're
that?
preserving it for future generations to keep pumping their bullshit into the next generation. And that's why they start at public school age children and take them out. That's why Phil Plait was going around for the 50th anniversary to all the public schools, putting on presentations. So you give him a nice title and the kids think he's the authority and what comes out of his mouth is fact. And his whole purpose is to redirect children so that they will not listen and they will not study or question anything that comes out of anyone with authority's mouth. That's how you program children. You also start wars when you program children like that. When you really start to think about the impact of bringing up the next generation, what you pump down their throats when they're children, really sits in there and sets the next generation up for failure.
Yeah, I mean, we spent years looking into this stuff, trying to find the answers to it. We have found some of the answers. There are some things which we've said maybe which are not as correct as they could have been, but we'll correct them. We don't mind admitting that we sometimes make mistakes, but we correct it. But people tend to jump on what we say.
Doesn't change the results, though, does it?
It doesn't change the results because the photographs are there for all to see.
Right.
You know, these magically protected films against radiation and vacuum. And we've demonstrated that these films are damaged in a vacuum. And now NASA are having to address it. And because they haven't done it in 50 years, because nobody's brought the subject up, because nobody knew enough to be able to do it, until I mentioned it about 5 years ago, having heard of the problems with the Hexagon spy satellite, that the film had to be kept under pressure. Not a big amount, a small amount of pressure, but they had to be kept under pressure. Or the film would be damaged by a vacuum. And that was late 60s. NASA have avoided discussing vacuum problems on photographic film for as long as they can. They thought they got away with it. No, you didn't, NASA, because at the end of the day, you've been so generous in putting all these photographs out for us all to look at and admire and see what a wonderful job you did. And then we ask a simple question. How were those photographs produced in a vacuum? And the answer is they weren't. They were produced here on Earth, probably at Cannon Air Force Base or Hangar 1 at Menlo Park. They weren't produced on the moon.
A little bit of vacuum is great for preservation.
Yep.
But if you put too much vacuum or if you have too much vacuum, now it starts to outgas.
Yep.
So again, it all depends on how much vacuum you have.
I think the part of reducing, not a vacuum, but reducing the air pressure is because oxygen is quite active against pretty much any material and breaks it down. And if you want to preserve something, it's not really a vacuum. You're just reducing the amount of oxygen that's available to the surface.
Yeah, that's fine and dandy, but the fellows in the comment section, they refer to it as vacuum, not lower air pressure. So you have to think about their mentality level.
Well, that's where the discrepancy goes in. What people call a vacuum isn't really a vacuum.
It's just low air pressure.
Once you go past 10 to the minus 6, you are certainly in a vacuum because it's having a serious effect on man-made materials, particularly when you see the difference that you have to have one-time use only seals on everything you're using when you're past that level. Yeah. You can't use rubber, you can't use anything else. Now you know you're into a vacuum. The one thing that people that I talk to, they simply assume that technology is linear. It advances at a fast and constant rate. They don't understand that there are limitations to something. So when they compare the development of the aircraft or automobiles or anything else, it's progressively going on. Well, if you compare it like most people do, the space flight to aircraft, it developed at the same rate. If we landed on the moon in 1969, then there'd be no problem to have hotels orbiting the Earth. Okay, there'd be thousands of flights a day.
That's a good point, because what will happen is that you look back in the 1914, 15, 16, 17, and now you get to about 1918, 1920. Now you're starting to carry 1, 2, 3 passengers, people to take for rides and things like that. Now you start getting into 1935, 1940, 1950. Look at the amount of passengers that slowly started to be added to those planes as they got bigger. And now you have bathrooms, luxury suites in some of these planes, like the ones that fly around Dubai, these big Airbuses. I mean, they have creature features in there that you don't even have at home. And these are planes that fly at 37,000 feet. But you don't see that happening with any of this technology for the space age. It hasn't gone anywhere.
But people think it's linear. And if it was linear, after 50 years of landing on the moon, there'd be hotels on the moon. But to come closer to Earth, which is so much easier, 100 miles up would be a busy place. You'd be able to grab an Airbus and just go up to a hotel and back and do your conference there.
So where are all these passengers being ferried back and forth to the moon right now? You see, back in those days, it slowly built up until you had 520 passengers on a plane. Well, how many people go on these spaceships now, even to the space station? 3? 4?
Yeah, that.
How many go to the moon? 0?
But that's what I'm saying. The technology is not linear. But people like to think that our advancements are just continuous, that there are no barriers, that it continues on. And like you said, they're going to send before the end of the year a probe to the moon to measure the radiation. Did they not have one in 1966? Did they not have a machine there that was doing that? Did they not land and put all of that experimental equipment out for 6 missions that are still so-called working today? Do they not have a radiation detector? I mean, you go out with Orion, they don't even have a damn camera anymore, right? It's all CGI. Where's the linear progression of technology in space travel? We can see it with Elon Musk. It goes off the ground a few thousand feet and it rapidly disassembles itself. These problems should have gone away a long time ago. Long time ago. Long time ago.